Hello! So this evening we are going to do a navigation exercise in Microsoft Flight Simulator using the Carenado Cessna 182RG. As you will see from the conditions outside, it's pouring down with rain and it's dark, so it's going to be tricky, and we are not going to use GPS either, we are just going to use radio navigation. So if we go and have a look at the map, we're going to fly from Duxford in the south of England down through several VOR stations on towards London Southend, and we're going to do so without seeing our position in Little Nav Map either. So we've turned off the trail and the aircraft icon, so we can't see ourselves at all. We're going to have to work out where we are along the route. Okay, so we'll just leave that on that display so we can see the whole route as we have kind of estimated it. So I'm just going to put this down to 1,000 foot to move the descent markers around so they don't overlap our route too much. Okay, so inside the aeroplane there's a few things we need to know about. So we're going to press B to calibrate the altimeter, we're going to press D to calibrate the horizontal situation indicator. So the frequencies in the GNS 530 for the radio control the central radio or horizontal situation indicator here. The analog, or the older, sorry, it's not analog, digital, the older set underneath the GNS 530 controls the nav2, which is the instrument over here that just has a localizer needle on it. So we'll explain how these all work along the way. So this is as much going to be a guide to other people of how to use radio navigation as much as it will be to illustrate that this can be done. Okay, so I'm just going to turn my volume down a little bit. It's very late here. I don't want to wake the rest of the house up. So we are going to depart from Duxford on runway 24 by the look of it. So we'll be turning left. We're on this particular parking space just here. So we'll be turning left and then right and then right. Okay, so hopefully we can see where we're going. It's going to be quite tricky. So we'll come off the parking brake and we're rolling. So while we are taxiing out, which is going to be quite tricky, it's kind of magical out there, isn't it? So while we're taxiing out, we're going to move the heading bug to 24 degrees. This is going to be really hard to do, actually. The wind is pushing the aeroplane around as well as me doing this. So there's 240 degrees, and we're still on the track. Can we see anything from outside? We kind of can. So this is not advisable what we're doing. We're just doing it purely as an illustration that it can be done, basically. So we nearly got lost then, look, on the way to the runway. That's how bad the conditions are. But we're going to use everything in our arsenal of toys in the aeroplane, apart from GPS, to get us to the destination. So here's the runway. And we'll be explaining as we go of what we're looking at and what we're doing. So we're pulling out onto the runway now. We are literally down to about 10 feet visibility, aren't we? It's quite amusing. There we go. So there's the runway. So you'll notice we are now pointing towards the heading bug. Okay, so we will be using heading mode on the ILS, so on the autopilot once we're up and running and in flight, but we're not going to be using it just yet. Okay, let's see if we can get this any brighter on the instrument lights or anything inside. Can we? A little bit, but not much. Okay, we're pretty much good to go anyway, so let's go and turn on the pitot heat Now just prior to takeoff, so we don't end up with instruments freezing up or anything like that. Hey, full throttle. Let's press F so we get some view of the direction we're going. So hold the centre line with the rudder. Wait till we get past about 70 knots and gently pull up. And we are in the air. So, goodbye ground, goodbye seeing anything for quite some time now. So we'll carry on flying 240 degrees. We're going too steeply at the moment, so we're just letting off back pressure to get back to about 1,000 feet a minute. We'll be fine. And we'll keep climbing out at 240 degrees for a little while until we get to sort of 1,500, 2,000 feet above sea level. So we're just controlling this by looking at the attitude indicator and watching the compass, keeping an eye on the vertical speed. We're being pitched around a little bit, it's very windy. So this is really extreme conditions, and we're going to do this pretty much by hand. So we're just balancing the pressure we're putting on the stick. We're not trying to trim it yet. We're getting it into a ballpark so we can then engage the autopilot and let the autopilot take over. So what we'll do is come over here and we'll set the autopilot to 2,000 feet and arm it. We'll go autopilot on, heading mode on, and the autopilot is closing up the gap to 2,000 feet, so it should wind off the vertical speed now as it gets closer to it. So let it carry on for a moment. There we go, vertical speed is being wound off. So now we're doing exactly what we set out to do, which is fly 240 degrees at 2,000 feet. So if we go and look at the map, so we are somewhere over here now. Now we want to go towards this VOR. So one way of doing that is to turn the course until the needle's in the middle, and then turn the heading to match it. So the autopilot's in heading mode, remember, so it's going to chase that. So that's going to go, we're going to have to keep moving it because we're moving laterally to the course, remember. We're flying 240 degrees. We're not flying straight towards the next radio beacon. So we can see over here we are 4 miles away from it, just under. And we're almost on the track. But if we wanted to be on this track, this is the 202 degree track, what we do is we switch this over to 202 degrees. So that's 180, 190, 202 degrees. So we are off to the right of the track. Yeah, so we just turn towards the track. So in other words, we're out over here somewhere. So we're turning towards the track at about 50 degrees angle towards it. We are only 2 miles away from the VOR. So let's go at an even steeper angle. Obviously the more, there we go, so now we turn sharply back towards it. We're probably going to overshoot, look, because the autopilot can't react quickly enough. So we're now off to the left of that line and almost on top of the beacon. So we'll think in terms of what do we want to do after we've gone past Barkway. We want to be on the 203 degree track still. But watch this. Watch the arrow, the white arrow. At the moment that means we're travelling to the VOR. So watch it in combination with this distance. 1.2 miles away, 1.1 miles away. Now we're not directly over it, look, we're off to the left. So it won't get any closer probably. We're 1 mile away. Watch the white arrow. At the moment we're going to the VOR. Watch the arrow. So we probably lost signal and it will come back on any moment. there it goes. So the white arrow has flicked over, meaning we have gone past the VOR. We are now travelling from it, not to it. We're still on the same path. We want to be 202 degrees though. So we're a little bit off that. So we'll just correct this ever so slightly. Oh, maybe it is right. So we're off to the left. So we're over here. Yeah, so this line being to the right means we are off to the left of the line, of the 202 degree line. So that is the 202 or 203 degree line. We are off to the left of it. So to correct that, we can turn towards it. So we're moving the heading bug. We're still in heading mode, remember. So we're flying an intercept course. We can see over here we're now 2 miles away from the VOR and getting further away with every moment. Here comes the course deviation indicator. When it's in the middle, we're on that line. So we can pull this in now and get the airplane to turn left back onto it. When you are within a couple of these dots on this line away from it, you can switch the autopilot into nav mode and it will switch. If you're too far away from the line, it won't do it. So when it's in nav mode, it means the autopilot will pull this in all on its own. Yeah? So the autopilot is manipulating the heading, so we can move the heading bug now. It doesn't mean anything to the autopilot anymore. We're in nav mode. So it's tracking the VOR itself. Now it's important when you're doing this that you have the GPS in VLOC mode. If you press the CDI, it will go back into GPS mode. That's no good to us because we're not using a GPS track. So you have to press the CDI button to put it in VLOC mode for these instruments to reflect the frequencies that we've tuned in. Okay, so we are now 5 miles away, nearly, from the Barkway VOR. So let's tune in the next one, the Brookmans Park VOR. So we want 117.50. So we'll change the frequency over here. So 117.50. And we switch it to active. We want the same direction, and notice the needle hasn't moved because we were exactly on the line. Yeah, so we're going into Brookmans Park now. And we are 10 miles away from it and counting down. Yeah? So the distance is slowly counting down. So just to illustrate this of how the needle works, watch. If we go to heading mode on the autopilot again, and we'll use the heading bug. So I've turned right away from the line. Watch what the needle does. It will slide left, meaning we are to the right of the line. Yeah, notice there's a little diagram of an aeroplane here. So look at where the aeroplane is in relation to the line. It's to the right of it. If we turn back across the opposite direction, so we'll do an intercept course of 30 degrees or so, back left again, and you'll see the aeroplane will get closer and closer to the line again. So when the aeroplane's on top of the line, then you are on top of that radial, that 203 degree radial in this case. So we can swing it back in. We've overshot slightly, but you can see how it works. So we just intercept it by a small angle and we'll be good to go. Notice because we are within a couple of dots, we can switch to nav mode, and the autopilot will look after centering it up all on its own by banking us either way to change direction. So we're now only 6 miles away from the Brookmans Park VOR. So when we get to Brookmans Park, we want to leave it on a course of 123 degrees. So just for a visual reference for ourselves, let's go and spin the heading bug around. Remember, we're in nav mode, so we can do this because it won't affect it because it's not looking at the heading bug at the moment. You know, the autopilot's taking no notice of it. So just use that as a visual reference. That's where we're going to turn the course to. and we're gonna change course before we get there to see what happens. So at the moment we're 5 miles out. If we wait till we get to 3 miles out, we will go and change our course, but we'll do it early. So what we're going to do is essentially get to about here and then change course to 123. And what it should do is change onto an intercept course all on its own, but it may lose the frequency and go to heading bug mode on its own. We'll see what happens. So just coming up to 4. So as soon as we get to 3 miles, I'm doing it early on purpose to show you what can happen. You never quite know between different aeroplanes until you're used to them how they behave when they get too far away from the signal. So 3 miles is coming up and we're about to change the course any moment now. So we're going to spin this round and look what's happened to the autopilot. It's gone into roll mode. In other words, we deviated too much and it can't do it. Yeah, so it's given up. So what we'll do, we'll go to heading mode temporarily. So we'll get the aeroplane to at least fly the same track. But remember, we turned off at 3 miles out. And the aeroplane now is busy turning to 123 degrees. So we're now going this direction, but we're not on top of the line, we're to the left of it. Remember? So we turned off early, so we're over here somewhere. So what we can do is turn back towards the line, put ourselves on an intercept course. So we're now 2 miles from the VOR. Yeah, the white line has flicked over. The white arrow, sorry. 2.2 miles away from it. So we're somewhere over here. And we're on an intercept course for the 123 degree radial from the VOR. We're to the left of the line at the moment. When the CDI, the course deviation bar, when that starts to come across, we're getting close to it. And remember, when you get within a couple of dots with the course deviation bar, you can switch the autopilot back to nav mode and it will lock onto it itself. So just wait for it. We're 3 miles away now. How long is this leg, just out of interest? It's 11 miles. So we're somewhere here. Or to the left, remember. .5 miles. Still not coming in, is it? We'll be patient. If we want to expedite it, we just turn at a sharper angle to the course. So we could go another 10 degrees, for example. And here it comes. So we just weren't patient enough. So remember, so we can make this approach angle shallower, which means the bar will move more slowly. Yes, we're approaching the line at a shallower angle, so it's not going across so quickly. So once you're within a couple of dots on the line, you can switch the autopilot to nav mode. So should we try it? And it's done it. So the aeroplane's actually tilting, you know, is banking in towards the line to get on it quickly. So it's turning right, and now it's levelling out. And how far away are we? We're 5 miles away now. Or we're 5 miles from Brookman's Park. But it's 11.5 miles along here. So let's retune now to Lambourne 11560. Okay, so 11560. So this will be worth looking to see if this remains on nav mode when we switch frequencies. Ready? No. It's switched to roll mode, so we have to go back to nav mode. Yeah. We leave the course the same. We're still coming in on the same course, 123 degrees. But we're now flying towards the Lambourne VOR. So you've got the code up there, look, which confirms it. And we are 4 miles away from it and counting down. Just under 4 miles. And we're on the 123 degree radial into the Lambourne VOR now. Notice it tells you the radial from the beacon underneath its identity. So that's the opposite direction. Look, we're flying directly towards it. So we're on the 306 degree radial from Lambourne. So if you wanted to use that for your own benefit, you could measure a distance, measure 306 degrees and figure out where you are. So if you measure 2 miles at 306 degrees, you can then put a mark on your map. So when we leave Lambourne, we want to be on a 102 degree heading. Yeah, so we can actually do that. So we'll go heading mode and we'll switch the heading to 102 degrees, which is about there. Now notice we're going off to the left of the line already, so we turned early. So we're off to the left at the moment, but we'll wait until we've gone past the VOR. So at the moment we're still going to the VOR at 11560, which was this one, the Lambourne VOR. As we go past it, so within half a mile, look, we've just skipped just past it. The white arrow will flick over, meaning we're now flying away from it. There it goes. So we want to be on that 102 degree track, so we'll turn the course to match. So it's about there. We're off to the left. So we turn our heading bug. The autopilot is still in heading mode, remember. So we pass off on an intercept course. So we'll go to 130 degrees. Oops. If you can control the heading bug. So you should see the course deviation indicator start to move fairly soon. So we will stay on this course. Here it comes. So we'll get ready with nav mode. Remember, when it's fairly near the middle, we can capture. Ready? That's the second dot and go. And it's done it. Look, it's gone to nav mode. So it's just centering up on the 102 degree track, or radial, sorry, from the VOR. So we're flying this 102 degree radial. Now, notice there's no beacon at this end to tune into, so we're just going to use the distance measuring equipment to say stay on here until we are 21 miles away from Lambourne. Okay? So we'll just sit and watch the distance creeping up. So can we see anything outside? No, we can't. So this should be fun. So what we're going to do is fly directly over the top of London Southend. Then turn the reciprocal of, well, actually which way, yeah, so the wind, let's just check the wind at the runway. 160 degrees 4 knots, so it's coming in from this direction. Oh, sorry, this direction, so it's a crosswind basically. But it's not much. So we'll use runway 23. So we'll fly straight over where we think it is, and then we'll turn to the reciprocal of the runway direction, which for us will be 54 degrees. Yeah? And then we'll fly out here, tune in ILS while we're flying 54 degrees. Get about 6 or 7 miles out, and then do a U-turn, and hopefully the ILS should pick up. But for the moment, we're just flying along here on this radial, 102 degrees from the 11560. So 11560 is tuned in on the radio. We are now 7 miles away, so we just got to wait until we're 21 miles away. That should put us directly over the top of the airfield. or in the ballpark. It's never exact with radio navigation. I have to say I love the red lighting at night in the RG. It's fantastic. I just realised I didn't put the undercarriage up. We've been flying along with the undercarriage down. I mean, thankfully we're not going very fast, but we'll go a little bit faster now. Have to remember to put the undercarriage back down. It's quite eerie at night, isn't it? You can't really see anything, especially as I've set mist and fog and rain. So, it's not raining at the moment. We've just got this cloud that I've preset. Although it is raining, yeah, it's just that you can't see on the windscreen at this speed. Okay, so we're now coming up to 10 miles away from the VOR. So we keep going until we're 21 miles away. We could go and preset that heading if we wanted to be, was it 56 degrees or 54 degrees? So let's go and look, and we will move the heading bug, because remembering we are on nav mode at the moment. We'll move the heading bug to 54 degrees, ready for when we get there. So there's 60, there's 54 about there. So when we get to 21 miles away, we'll switch to heading mode, and the autopilot will turn left to the heading bug. So we're just coming up to 12 miles away. So this is very much a visualization exercise inside your head. So we know we are on the line that we have chosen on this course. Yeah, so we think that's about 101, 102 degrees. Over here it says we're on 103 degrees. But the further away you get, the less this will move around. Obviously when you get very close to a VOR, all the numbers move rapidly because, you know, you're traversing its airspace. The further away you get, the radial doesn't change as rapidly. That's 14 miles coming up. So we can plot that on the map and figure out where we are. So we know we're on this line. If we go and measure, we're about there at the moment, just south of Wickford, north of Basildon. So we're almost over to Southend. So we're now 15 miles away from the beacon. So we are about here now. So you can figure out by looking at the distances and the VOR stations and the radials exactly where you are. If you don't have distance measuring equipment, then you can use 2 VOR beacons and triangulate. So for example, I could tune in Detling at 11730 on the other station, 11730. Watch the needle. Oh, we have to set it to active, don't we? Sorry. Watch the needle, there it goes. So this is saying, if we spin this around, didn't go quite far enough, there we go. So it's directly south of us at the moment. Yeah. So, or if we spun it around the other way, it's directly north of us. So if you go from here, measure distance, and go directly to 0 degrees, which is there, that's exactly where we are. Yeah? So you can see how you can triangulate between 2 different VORs to figure out your position. Obviously there's usually a small delay. You can see we've already moved. Because we are travelling across the path of that VOR, the needle has already moved. And it's sweeping further and further away as we go past. But we're not worrying about that one, we're worrying about this one. So we're coming up to 20 miles. So we're now 1 mile away. So we're probably here now. So we're just waiting and waiting and waiting, just coming up to 21 miles. So remember we said when we get to 21 miles we will change to heading mode. There it goes, that's 21 miles just crossed, and heading mode. So the plane is now turning to the heading bug. So while we're in heading mode we can retune nav1 to the ILS frequency. So we're somewhere over here and we've turned left and we're flying this way now. So we're going to retune to 11135 and set our course to 233 degrees. So 11135. Set that to active. So it's alive already. And then change the course to 233 degrees, which is the direction of the runway. So we've got a visual reference relative to us. So 233 degrees, whoops, 240, 33 is going to be that direction. So the exact opposite direction that we're going. So that makes sense. We're flying this way, the runway's that way. And the line is off to our left, which it is. If we're over here somewhere, the line is off to our left. Now the tricky bit is knowing how do we know how to turn around or when to turn around. So we can use nav2, remember. So what we might do is measure this to say, well, we'll use this one because we already had it tuned in. Measure a line out to here, for example, say that far out. So at 24 degrees from Detling, we do our U-turn. Or let's see what a bit wider angle might be. So at 26 degrees. So if we turn this to 226, or 220 even. So we've moved this to 220 at the top of the dial. When this needle gets into the middle, we'll begin our about turn. See, now it's interesting, you can see the glide slope as well, so that gives you another indication of how far away you are. So at 2,000 feet in the air, and bearing in mind the altitude of the airfield, which is 36 feet, so you can work out at 2,000 feet we're probably about 5 or 6 miles out now, based on a 3-degree glide slope. We're now below the glide slope, so we could turn around. We don't have to go so far out of our way to come back in. So we're not going to wait, we're not going to go right out to the end of the glide slope and come back in. We're going to turn back in because we can. Because when we turn in we'll be under the glide slope and can go for approach mode. Okay, so we're going to turn the plane round, make sure we go the same direction as the direction the line is from us. So we're turning towards the line. We're going to slow down now. Now we may overshoot. Yeah, we are going to overshoot, but that's not a problem. We won't overshoot by much, we'll just turn back in towards the runway slightly. Actually, we may have done it just about perfectly looking at this. Oh no, the sim's going to crash. Okay, so as you will have guessed, the simulator just crashed. So I've put ourselves back in the air and we are, or we should be, approaching the glide slope. So yeah, we're coming in, we're at 1700 feet, we're a bit lower than we were, but we're just approaching the glide slope, so we're going to put the autopilot into approach mode. So what you will notice then, we're tuned into 11135, we're still on 233 on the radial, so the aircraft is turning slightly right to get onto the localizer, and you'll notice the vertical speed dip down now as soon as we get onto the glide slope. So we've flown into the glide slope from underneath, so the marker came down and we hit it, and the airplane is now descending on the glide slope. So we'll put the gear down and we're going to moderate the throttle to lose some airspeed, and we're going to look out over the nose. And our only real way now of knowing how far away we are, because notice we don't have distance measuring equipment on this instrument now, is to use our altitude. Yeah, so on a 3-degree glide slope, you know that 2,500 feet is going to be about 8 miles. So 1,250 feet is going to be about 4 miles out. Or 1,200 feet in our case, because we know that Southend's about 50 feet above sea level. So we're about 4 miles out now. So we're just moderating the throttle, because remember we're descending anyway, so we haven't got any flaps out yet. So I'm just going to reduce the throttle more to slow down enough to put the flaps out, and then we'll have to increase the throttle to maintain airspeed once the flaps are out. So there goes the first stage of flaps. And we may come in with just the first stage of flaps to keep our speed up on purpose. So we're going to stay fairly fast at the moment. Coming down to 900 feet. So remembering when we were at 1,200 feet we would have been about 4 miles out. So at 600 feet we're going to be about 2 miles out. So let's get the speed back under control. So the autopilot is following the glide slope and the localizer for us. We could fly this by hand, but this means I can actually point things out, you know, without having to completely concentrate on the needles. So we want to be somewhere between 60 and 80 knots. So should we go for full flaps? Let's try it. Let's see how much throttle we have to provide if we give it full flaps. So speed isn't really coming off in a hurry. Here it comes. The speed's coming off now. So I'm just using the throttle. So we're under 2 miles out now. And we've lost the glide slope. Oh, it's reacquiring, it's doing okay. That will be because we introduced flaps. So it kicked it into the air, so the autopilot momentarily lost the glide slope, but it's still got it. Yeah, so looking at the autopilot down here, and it's recaptured and it's fine. So you do need to be careful, and you do need to be mindful of making configuration changes when you are in approach mode. So we're starting to see things on the ground. We should see the ground very soon. Should see the runway very soon. So I'm getting ready to disengage. 200 feet. Remember, the ground level is at 50 feet. We're seeing lights. 100 feet. We're about 50 feet above the ground. And there's the entrance to the runway. Look at that. So pull the throttle back, straighten us up onto the centre line, which is quite tricky given the conditions, and we're down. So it just shows it can be done. Obviously in the real world you wouldn't even attempt this. Not with a light aircraft. You would go and fly somewhere else. You would divert. But it just shows it is possible. So flaps up. and we look for an exit. So where we look from outside, it's going to look quite comical, isn't it? So let's just turn back a little bit here to get off the runway. Not much to see, is there? So it was a shame that the simulator crashed and broke the kind of the flow of what we were doing, but at least you got a good example of seeing the, you know, working the procedures really. We almost lost the taxiway. Look, that's how appalling the conditions are. We're just following the taxiway back into the parking. So we're just going to go and park it somewhere here out of the way. Behind the Vulcan, that will do. So there's a Vulcan parked up at Southend. Okay, so parking brake on. Oh dear me. Pitot heat off. Mixture cut, which will stop the engine. Landing lights off, taxi lights off, nav lights off, beacon lights off, magnetos off, alternator off, batteries off, and we're cold and dark. And there's a bug in this aeroplane at the moment that you have an infinite power source on the autopilot, so we'll just ignore that. And we're just using a torch now to look around inside. So there we go. You can just see the Cessna parked here now with the Vulcan V-bomber in the background. And it stopped raining miraculously. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed that. So an instrument flight using nothing but radio beacons to get from Duxford over to London Southend. I'll see if I can join the two bits of video together, and hopefully you'll find them on YouTube.